So in the previous video, we set up our environment, we set up our database, and we also created our database table. We created our database table. We use the MySQL database, but like I said, you can use any database of your choice. And we seeded our database table with some tasks. And also we wrote the boilerplate for our application. We set up body parser, we set up cause, and we wrote this function to connect to MySQL. And we called it to give us an instance to the connection to MySQL that we can use to run our queries. So yeah, we have our base project setup. We also created a folder for our templates. Now before we start, because in this video we're going to be loading tasks, so we're going to be seeing the first view of our to-do application. We're going to be loading tasks onto the page. But before we start that, I want to give a small advice. Now, if you're coming from a background, a front-end development background where all you do is consume APIs, so you consume APIs that return JSON, and you're already used to that style, probably from React, a React background, a Vue.js background, and stuff like that, you might want to unlearn that. I'm not saying you should throw all that knowledge away, but while approaching how we're going to be building this application, think more in a full stack manner. Don't think in a client or front-end, back-end kind of way. We're still going to be making API calls, but those API calls are going to be returning HTML. So it will feel more like the multi-page applications of the past. It's just that in this application, most especially, we're not going to be changing pages, but we're going to be loading stuff into our page. But just try and forget everything from the whole getting JSON payload and using your front-end framework to visualize it. Just follow along with these examples, and by the time we finish, you should start getting a good understanding of the flow when it comes to building an hypermedia driven application with HTMX. So let's get started. I hope that helps. But we might not be able to say that now. Let's get on with the application. When we're done, you'll most likely remember what I said and be able to know and fully grasp why I had to say that in the first place. So let's get started. Now the first thing we're going to do, we're going to be creating our first page, which is the home page. We want to create our own page for the application. But instead of creating it at some sort of front end, no, we're going to be creating it within our Node.js application. This Node.js application is going to contain everything about the app, and every single view that goes to the browser is going to be a template. It's going to be a template that is going to return HTML to the client. So the first template we want to create inside this templates folder is the home page. So I'm going to say home.ejs. home.ejs. EJS is an extension, is a standard extension for files when you're using the EJS, when you're using EJS as your view engine, as your templating engine. So I'm going to hit enter for that, and I think luckily it has some IntelliSense for HTML. So if I do HTML, you see I'm getting the Emmet abbreviations, and I can just click. Yep, and we have our HTML page. So this is our home page. Just going to pull this aside. Let's give it a title. To-do app. And for now, the setup here is going to be very basic. I'm going to have I'm going to bring some libraries in. I'm going to bring Bootstrap in just for some basic styling. You can ignore all the Bootstrap stuff, honestly. I'm just doing it to make this this application look a little pretty, but you can ignore all the Bootstrap stuff. But I'm going to bring in Bootstrap. So let's go and grab Bootstrap from the Bootstrap website. Say get Bootstrap. Get Bootstrap. Yeah, should the first link should do. Where's the docs? Okay, just docs. So let's go to docs, and we're just going to pick the Bootstrap file. Where is it? Okay, I think there's a link here. So I'm just going to get this link. Yep, for the CSS. So copy that and come back to VS Code, and we'll just paste that link here. So like I said, you can ignore this. I just want the app to look pretty. You can use any CSS library of your choice, or just go raw, write your own custom CSS. So yeah, we have Bootstrap in. The other thing we need to bring in is HTMX itself. So we need to bring in the HTMX library. So let's go back to our browser and go to HTMX. HTMX.org. Okay, and from here, we can just grab the link from this quick start section. Just grab the link here, And notice we're using the 1.9.12 version. Let me bump this page a little bit. Yeah. So as you can see, we're using the 1.9.12 version. So that's the version for this demo. So I'm just going to add that too. So we have Bootstrap and we have HTMX. HTMX is the compulsory thing here. Bootstrap is just for me to add some nice styling. So inside the body, I'm going to be creating two sections. One for one that will list all the tasks, and another one that will contain the form. So whether we want to add or update, that's where it's going to be in the form section, but the tasks themselves are going to be in the left hand side, on the left hand side rather. So I'll say div, create a div. This is going to be my container div. I'm going to use some bootstrapped styles to make sure that I'm getting some grid styling here. So I create a row. This is just a top margin. So then I'm going to create two divs. We have two divs. So that'll be two sections. This is going to be the tasks section, and this is going to be the section for the forms. So here, I'm just going to put an H2 that will say task list. Yeah, task list. And here, this will have the tasks. Oh, sorry, this will have the forms. So let me probably just say task form. So here, let's just say H2 task form. So this will contain a task list and this will contain a task form. That's good. Inside here, I'm going to have another div. This is the div that will actually contain the tasks. And here I will also have a div that will contain the form. For this div, I will give it an ID. And I'm going to set this ID to be task list. Now, these IDs are very important for HTMX. You'll be seeing much later. So I'm going to give this task list, and I'm going to give this an ID also, and set it to task form. So task list, task form, these are going to be side by side. I'm going to add some bootstrap classes so that they can be side by side. So I'll just say call, and also repeat the same thing here and say class call. So what bootstrap is going to do is divide these two equally within this entire row. Just going to give them the same amount of space. So we save this. I think this is all we need for now. Now, if we go back to our server rather, let's go back to our server code. Now we can render this home page from here. So what I'm going to do is this. Instead of calling res.send, I'm going to clear the send part. And this time I will use the render function that has been provided by EJS. So I'll use the render function. And inside the render function, I can point to an EJS template. Now, when you want to point to your EJS template, the views folder is the base. So everything starts from there. So I'm not going to say views/templates/ whatever the template is. You're going to say templates because it's inside the views folder. And I can say home. Yeah, I can just say home. I don't need to put the EJS extension. So templates home. So everything here has to be relative to the views folder. Then don't do this. Don't do something like this. Yeah, I don't think that will work. So templates home. Good. Templates home. So now instead of just loading a message, instead of this simply just loading a message, it will load the home page using this as a template, using this HTML code as a template. So let us test that out. Let's save. Go back to our command line to restart the application. Kill it. No, I don't want to enable dictation. No, I don't. So let's say node server. So it's running, meaning everything is fine, at least. So let's go back to Google Chrome. Go to my application. Now if we refresh the application, yep, we now have task list and task form. Yeah, task list and task form. So we're now saying our application come to life. So we have task list and task form. All good. But we are here to load the tasks onto the page. Yeah, that's what we wanted. That's what we came here for. We want to see the tasks on our page. So now how do we do that? Why don't we find out inside VS Code? So back here in VS Code, I'm going to be creating a function. Now, we're going to be doing CRUD, like create, read, update, delete. And what we want to do now is read. We want to read the tasks. So I'm going to write a function that reads all the to-do tasks and just returns them. Yeah, it reads all the to-do tasks and just returns them. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is create a template. I'll create a template for what is going to be returned, the to-do tasks that are going to be returned. So let's come here inside our templates and let's create a new file. And this will be todos.ejs. todos.ejs. So we create that. That is the template we want to return so that the users can see our views and, as we'll see later on, perform other actions. So inside here, what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to create a list, an unordered list. I'm going to create an unordered list. And I would expect that this template is going to take the to-dos from my database. So I'm going to be writing logic inside my server that is going to fetch the tasks from the database and pass it to this template. So I expect some data to come to this template, and that data will be a collection of our to-dos. So let's say we're going to name those the data tasks. So I'm going to use EJS to not output. I'm going to use it to iterate over the piece of data. I'm going to use it to iterate over the piece of data. So let's say this gets tasks. That's our collection of tasks, our collection of to-dos. I'm going to use for each, which is EJS's template function for looping over a bunch of items. Then I'm going to call an internal function inside it. This is just like the for each function that you have in your JavaScript arrays. So we have this function. Function is going to be incomplete here, so we will need to come down here and complete it. So I'll say, yep, this, and here we can complete the function. Yeah, good. Yeah, and I think we need a bracket there. Yeah, we need to finish up a bracket. That's this bracket. So this bracket terminates here. This curly brace terminates here. Okay, so we have this, and we're going to be looping over each item. I'll call it task item. Going to be looping over each item. That's good. And for each item, what we're going to do is create a list item. We'll create a list item, and for now, we're just going to display the list item. So I'm going to use EJS's output. That's one that takes the equal, and let's close that here, and that will just be task item. Now, what do we want to display? We want to display the task itself. Remember, from our database, each task is in this field, task. Yeah, this field, task. So that's what we want to do. That's what we want to display, rather. So I'm going to say task item dot task. Task item dot task. So yeah, with this, we should be able to get our tasks. Yeah, should be able to get our tasks. So we loop over a tasks data that is sent to this template. We use the for each function that EJS has provided us, similar to the JavaScript array function. So we call an internal function inside. That's a callback. Each item we're iterating over is a task item, and we display each task item as an HTML list item. Okay, so let's save that. Save it, and now let's go and write the function that is going to pass data to this particular template. So to do that, I'm going to go to server.js. Now I can write this logic inside a route, but we're going to need this. We're going to be needing this a couple of times. So I'm going to write it inside its own function. So you'll see much later why we had to do that. So let's write a function. We're going to write an async function. Async function, I'm going to call the function fetch tasks. Fetch tasks. So we have the fetch tasks function. Now this fetch tasks function, what it's going to do is that it's going to go into our database and get us all our tasks. Yeah, it's going to get us all our tasks. But I also want it to do one thing. I want it to pass data to this template and just return it. Yeah, pass data to this template and just return it. So I will need the response. Yeah, I will need the response object from our route. That's this. so that I can call res.render. So that's all good. Now inside here, the first thing we're going to do is create our fetch query, fetch SQL. So that would just be let's say select all from the table tasks. Yeah, select all from the table tasks. Let me pull this aside. I think we don't have to go there or have it open right now. So yeah, we have the fetch SQL. And what do we do next? Let us run our query. This can blow up, so let's use a try-catch block. Let's do that in a try-catch block. And inside our try-catch block, I will say const results fields equals await. Then I'm going to use that DB object. Yeah, that is a handle on our connection. Say db.query, and I'm going to pass the fetch SQL. So I'm going to pass this query inside here. Save that. It returns the results and the fields. Most likely not going to be needing the fields. So from that we can then just render our template. So I'll say res.render, and I can say templates /todos. But we also need to pass data to this call. So it takes another argument, and that's the argument for the data. So I'm going to open an object which will represent all the data I want to pass in. And remember, inside here we're using a particular tasks collection. So we need to pass in tasks, and that tasks will be set to our results. So the results that we get is going to represent tasks, and here it's going to pass tasks to this template, and this template will be able to use it to do all these nice things that we want it to do. So we have server. Okay, so that's that there. Let's take care of some error stuff. Console.error. Now do note this application is not fancy, so we're not doing some sophisticated error handling and stuff like that, or trying to make it scalable. We're just trying to do a proof of concept. So if there's an error, just return a 500 status and send the error. So that's cool. Now we have an all-in-one function that runs a query against our database, fetches all our to-dos, and passes them into this template, which loops over them and creates an HTML list. So that is cool. But how do we get it into our application? To do that, what we're going to do is create a route. Yep, we're going to create another route that we can call from the front end, and it will return all the to-dos. So I'm just going to do a to-dos endpoint. We'll say async rec res. We have this, and from here, honestly, all we need to do is just call the fetch tasks function and pass it the response object. So fetch tasks response. This function already takes care of running the query and also returning our HTML. So we have an endpoint for HTMX to call and get some HTML back. Yeah, get this list back. Yeah, that's the template is going to be sending back. That's the HTML we're going to be returning from this endpoint. So how do we get HTMX to load these to-dos into our page? Let's go back to our home.ejs. Now we will scroll and go to where our task list is. We can simply load all our to-dos into this. Yeah, using HTMX. We can simply load all our to-dos into this. Now watch the magic. So the first thing we do is to call the hxget attribute called hxget, and hxget is going to go to the to-dos route. Sorry about that. Okay, that was outside. is going to go to the to-dos route. So HTMX get goes to the to-dos route. Now this template is relative to the entire application, so I don't need to do http / localhost column 3000. No. This is relative to the application. The application itself is loading these pages, so I can just do a relative part and go to /todos. Except you have the hypermedia server running on another address, you can use a relative part. If the same server is the one returning the front end, then you can just use relative part, which makes it so easy. So I'm going to go to the /todos endpoint. So that's good. Now I also want this to be done immediately the page loads. So we can't just open our page and the user has to click, which is the default event trigger in HTMX, but we can't just get to our page and wait for the user to click before we have this load up. Now to experiment that, let me save this. Let's see if I can experiment that. Let's save this. Let's run our server once again. Let's kill this and run the server. App is now running. Now let's go to our page. If we refresh, let me open DevTools before we refresh so that we can get a lot of insight into what's going on. I'm on network tab, so cool. So if we refresh our page, nothing happens. But I think if I click somewhere here, which is the default trigger, it should send me the request. First, let me see if I have my HTMX get. Cool. So, but the divas know, I think it's because the divas know width and height right now, because normally if I click anywhere, it's supposed to trigger the request, because that's the default trigger in HTMX. But we don't want that. We want it to load immediately the page loads. So we have to set HTMX trigger, and HTMX trigger will be set to the load event. So just load this immediately the page comes on. Load it into the page. Immediately we load up this page, load our tasks into the page. So let us save this. Now let us restart our server once again and hope everything works fine. Good, our server is running once again. Let's go back to our browser. And now when I refresh, I should see a network request here, but let's refresh first. Yep, we have our to-dos. We have a network request. Yep, and you can see it returns HTML. Yeah, we're returning HTML the hypermedia way, the way HTMX works. So we're returning HTML, and we have been able to load it into this place, and we have our task list. So now we've been able to successfully load our tasks. In the next video, we're going to learn how to add a new task. Yeah, we're going to be learning how we can add a new task to this list. See you in the next video.